Welcome back to TrippTalk Tech. We got a great show for y'all today. We get to sit down and pick the brain of an industry disruptor today. Our guest, he not only created and served a market that didn't exist at the time that he created it. I'm kind of convinced still that right now, what we'll get out of today's show is information that we didn't know was available to us or a benefit of a service that he has created that we just didn't know was out there and it existed, but we're going to learn today. See, today's show is for all my peoples out there that had those ski trips, those invitations. You wanted to go, family and friends, they wanted you to go. You had all of the clothes to be fresh and the leisure to go to all the ski parties, to the pajama parties that night. But when it was time to hit the slopes, you were like me, grabbing a couple hoodies and a pair of jeans and thought that was good enough for the slopes. This is the show for you today. Last but not least, if you're just a dreamer, if you're a person that's passionate about your craft and willing to work at your dreams, we got a show for you today. I want you guys to please help me welcome the founder, the innovator, the game changer, Forrest Shinner. How you doing today, man? Owner
Good,
of Kitlinda. How
good,
you
good.
doing today,
Thank,
man?
great, good for having. Thanks for having me.
Man, when I first reached out to you guys, my son he actually invited me to a family ski trip, and my first response and reaction to him was like, hey, that's a little expensive. We just actually came off a trip not too long ago, and it was like, I'll catch you on the next one. And then he came back, or actually, he started posting videos, and I started seeing his gear. And I'm like, well, I don't remember that North Face jacket. And I saw my grandson, and I didn't quite know he was decked out in Patagonia, but I'm trying to figure out what's going on. And he tells me, he's like, yeah, I just rented it. It popped in and showed up. And I'm like, well, you could have told me that when I went to go make my decision whether I wanted to go or not. So I didn't know such things existed. So I reached out to Forrest because I'm like, to me, this is the best thing since sliced bread. And I just wanted you to come on the show, talk to us a little bit about what you're doing, what Kitlinda is, how do you guys do your business, and then also kind of some of the technology wrapped around the business that you do.
Awesome. Yeah, it was a pleasure. I kind of mentioned when we first spoke on email. It was a pleasure working with your son. He reached out. I didn't. I'm not doing the day-to-day customer service, but I got some posts on Facebook and Instagram from this guy, and I'm like, he's just like raving, putting up cool videos, talking about how awesome we are, and he was really appreciative of what we were doing, and so I reached out to him and was like, thank you. He reached out to and literally called out our customer service as being awesome and the fulfillment as being awesome, and I love it. I always think we have some of the best customers, and your son is not an exception. Not we treat everybody like a VIP, and I was just loving that he also was appreciative of their service and what we are doing. Just as a service. So I'm so glad that you reached out to me. I love to kind of share the story, and happy
Appreciate
to
it.
answer any questions you have to help other people in here.
About that story, where did the idea come from? Because like I said, it's pretty genius.
Thank you. So the story is I grew up in Stowe, Vermont. That's where I'm sitting right now. And my parents have a brick and mortar ski shop, so skiing was kind of in our blood,
Okay.
skiing, snowboarding. So you can imagine having a ski shop your whole life. And I have an older brother, I have a mother, father. Our closets are like, decked with all the gear. And so I moved after college. I went to University of Vermont, moved down to New York City, and was doing the kind of finance rat race.
Okay.
And I would take trips up a lot of times up to Stowe. I still obviously love skiing,
Mhm.
but so I would take trips up to Stowe, and a lot of my friends from New York um, were either never skied before, or were typical New Yorkers that their stuff was at their parents' house, or they outgrew it, or girls would have warm clothing but wouldn't have ski clothing, like you basically mentioned,
Yeah.
they can look fresh at a party or walking down to work, but the jacket goes down to their waist. They don't have mittens. They don't have goggles. They don't have snow boots, they're appropriate. They don't have ski pants and a ski jacket. But I think that what was missing is also, there's certain style that you want even on when you're skiing. So I invited a girlfriend up at the time. I said, hey, come on up, and she was like, I don't have anything. And I was like, well, don't worry about it. You can basically steal clothes from my mom's closet or from our ski closet. And basically flew up with a duffel bag. That's how I would always fly up. And she went into the closet the first day and I was like, here's a list of the thing, pick out whatever you want. And it wasn't just, here's the jacket, I hope this fits. It was different sizes and styles and things like that. So, for a typical woman, like a New York City girl, not just this jacket, she wants her style, and, she was like, oh, wow, this is like Rent the Runway, but for the mountains.
I was going to say that. I was like, it sounds very
exactly. Yeah. Or like a black tux, for mountains or something like that. So companies like Rent the Runway were like very new, the black tuxes, camera rental, things like that. I mean, I think at that point, it was really a new market. You had even, the Ubers and things were still in their infancy this, 6 years ago. So I looked online. I was like, oh, that is kind of interesting. I'm surprised that they don't do it. And I even asked my father, I was like, you should, do like rental stuff. And he was like, well, we do some, but, we're not really incentivized to do clothing rental. And then, you have to then launder all this stuff. And then, you don't have the size for them and you have to guarantee it and you have to have a booking. And, so most places that did it locally, it was sort of like, if you came in and asked, they had a jacket, but you got what you got. You didn't have any choice, right? For the amount of SKUs you would have. And so then I looked online and there was nobody doing it. The only places I could see with any online presence were just for that area. And it would just be like rent jacket. And it just had like a table of prices, rent pant, rent goggles, rent gloves. And the prices were crazy. I mean, they were $30 a day for a jacket, $30 a day for pants. Some places rented goggles and gloves, but most wouldn't rent that. And I was like, God, if you just buy goggles and gloves, you're talking about easily 100 plus definitely. Just there. And then based on the jacket and pants, for their rental costs, you're adding another $60 a day. And I was like, these are great prices. And then there's no selection, it would just say jacket and they'd maybe have a picture of a red jacket. And I called up a couple places and they were like, I was like, yeah, I want to reserve. And they were like, just come in. We got stuff usually. I'm like, I can't imagine somebody flying out to Breckenridge on we should have something for you type concept, everything I heard was quality is also an issue too. Cause again, like
it's only one coat to rent
in Breckenridge. You don't really have much of you can't go elsewhere. You're either buying or that's what you get. So I actually was working a full-time job at the time and I was like, Dad, you should start this. He's like, I'm 65 years old. I have a business that, is already, more than probably he wants at 65 years old at the time. It was like, it's on the internet. It's, it's a great idea, but I just, I can't take on another project. So he basically talked me into, he's like, well, why don't you do it? We can do some of the fulfillment out of our store. You can work in the city. I'll help, get some clothing picked up. And I was like, okay, well, it's not that hard. Like, so, and this is probably where it goes into the tech thing. I had no, formal background and thing, like most people use websites.
Right. Yeah.
I worked for a team at a financial firm that had a lot of like programmers and things like that. So I had some of the understanding, but I just kind of bootstrapped it. We both put in some money, got some clothing, And then I just tapped my network in New York, had a friend that had an amazing firm called Frank Collective.
Okay.
And they gave us like some branding designs and things like that were amazing. And then I called up another friend that did like freelance web development, and we put together like a PHP website, on WordPress with WooCommerce, and just kind of figuring things out as we go. We launched. This all started in April of 2014. We actually didn't get the site up until just about the end. It was like December of 2014.
Okay.
I mean, it was around Christmas time.
Uh-huh.
And with most of these things, I've learned quickly it costs 3 times more than you expected and takes way longer. But I remember, we put it up. We had the website, and it made every mistake along the way. I remember even the first person on the site being like, I'm trying to order and I can't get my order. And I didn't have like, SSL cert. And I remember taking that first order, being like, oh, this is cool. And then it was just like, we were selling out. Like we had very little stuff and we would sell out. I would fly up on weekends. I would pack the orders for the week. I would leave them in front of the door. I had little, this goes out on Monday, this goes out on Tuesday. If an order came in that had to go out ASAP, I would either had some clothing in my apartment in New York and I'd box it up, or I'd call up my dad and be like, can somebody pack this up?
It's gotta go.
And it was bumpy. I was doing all the chats, phone calls, was all on my phone while I'd be at work or at night. Google AdWords and stuff. I just set up an account, watched YouTube videos, figured out what I needed to do. And we were off to the races.
Wow. And you did all of this, no team at all? You just one man show in the beginning?
One man show. Yeah. My dad was big on connecting because he had all the vendor relationships. So that was great. We got good prices because we already had these wholesale agreements. But, the team was a guy in Argentina that did web development. The team was going on Upworks and hiring a graphic designer in, Pakistan or in, Texas YouTube was a big one. I mean, it still is to this day, the internet, you can,
now,
any help file.
Those resources that you found, was it any particular site that you went to find those, or what that was your network kind of say, hey, I know a guy?
It was my network telling me some people, or Upworks was a big one. It still is for kind of freelance folks. That's been a great resource, especially being seasonal and not knowing what you have, self-funded. It's great to hire somebody and be like, hey, this is your role. But some things would be like a graphic designer, like I need 2 hours of work.
Yeah. You don't need to make that a position.
Exactly. And there would be a lot of things. So it was great. I could get, some of it would be, hey, this is mechanical, and I might just bid it out real inexpensive. And I'd end up getting like international people, or I'd be like, no, I want somebody that's more of like a subject area expert. And I'd maybe hire somebody local, sometimes just because of language barriers. But, I still have folks that are developers are in Belarus and Russia. I still use folks from the Philippines. These guys are amazing to do some, any kind of like almost like
offshore.
Yeah, exactly. Offshore work. You'll have like small projects and you're like, I just need somebody to like bang this thing out and upload products, do some of these things. So that's been a great help.
That's cool. When you have projects like that, do they go out to bid, or is that more internal and then you figure that out, or how does that?
Yeah, that's a good question. I've kind of I'll start sometimes with a bid and maybe raise the bid on like an Upworks. And then sometimes you also get where kind of roughly what the cost is. So then you'll, maybe say, as you become more educated in it, you're like, okay, now I know how long this takes. So now I can maybe pay hourly based on this. I tend to, with Upworks, like more project based. So you're not managing time.
Oh, wow. Yeah.
Well, just like, they're remote, they're not sitting in front of them. You figure out how long it takes and you have a budget. But it's also a great resource where you can, I would interview people digitally or via email, as well as like get on the phone. And sometimes they're themselves like will tell you they're not a fit, but will educate you in what you're looking for. Maybe I don't even know what the name of like, hey, I'm looking for somebody to do this. And they're like, you need a web analytics person. That's not, like, okay, you need that. Or like, you need PPC marketing person, or you need a paid, so you find some of those things. And then, the network of people saying like, here's an agency I work with that does this. Here's an agency that does this. And that works as well.
Like you said, when you ran into some of those issues that you had, like you said, the SSL or whatever, like how did you come to finding those issues? Was it just from, oh man, people start complaining about this one area, let's jump on it, or is it, in self-auditing and it's like, hey, yeah, okay, we're just getting better. Last year we did this and now how does that process look?
Yeah, I mean, I think where you feel the pain, I think early on, and I mean, even to this day, sometimes to my detriment, it's just like looking at it, watching it. So, people joke, they're like, this guy will see every email, every text chat that comes through and things like that. And it's not true, but being on it a little bit to have like, especially the first year, it's like when the call came in and they're like, it doesn't work. You're like, okay, what's going on? And then just start like calling people to figure out what's going on. And then asking the question follow-up too. Sometimes it's like, all right, they fixed it. What did you do? And then you slowly educate yourself. And because I didn't have a huge team, you kind of had to know like, oh, okay, this is the domain. This is roughly how this works. Okay. And this is where the cert sits, and that certifies this payment processor who I also bid out on. And that payment processor is this guy, and this is the payment gateway. You just slowly start to understand like maybe 10,000 foot view of how these things start to connect, which is just, for any business owner, right? Or anybody doing anything to know, okay, maybe I'm an expert here, but you can sort of know a little bit of the words and terminology of what's going on in other places.
And like you said, you want to also understand, to your point, I don't need to know to the very detail, but again, a customer might want to know, are my payments protected? Yes, they are. And
Yes.
this is how, and you understand how the payment processing works. So,
Yep.
yeah, I'm sure. Now, with some of those issues, right? Have you ever gotten to that point where you've built a lot? It looks like, I'm looking in the background, you're hard at work right now. But have you ever got to that point where you just felt like, you know what, this just isn't it? Like, I've been throwing all my best against the wall, but I'm tired.
Yeah, I mean, I wish I could say that I wasn't, but I'd say, yeah, it happens a lot. And for this business seasonally too, this is also the point of the year where it starts to build up for me, and it's happened kind of year over year, and you just have to like, I always love the Winston Churchill quote, when going through hell, keep going. So I try to take some breaths, meditate,
Definitely.
breathe a little bit. But yeah, I mean, it can be tiring, but every year, you then just try to reboot a little bit and see where the pain is and try to eliminate those so you can take solace in the, new problems come up, but at least you're fixing some of the ones along the way. I know for me, it was I guess it would have been, no, not last year, 2 years ago in January. I was still working a full-time day job, which was starting to get really, really busy because I, then had a team of like 5 people in that job. And then the business for KitLender was then doing much bigger numbers. We had, 12, I think 13 employees at the time. And I would go to work at, get up at 6 a.m., be to work at
Hmm.
7, work until 7, come home and work until 2 or 3 in the morning. And it was, just beating me
Like
down. Well, then
grind.
and I had that kind of come to Jesus moment where I was like, this is either I need to pick one route or the other, So that's when I actually did quit my job in the city and was like, I have to do this full time. And you start to see that it's costing money too, right? Like, um, if you're not in it, things start to get missed. You can't watch it all the time. You make mistakes. And so that's when I moved back up to Vermont to run this full time. And that was, it's one of those things that had to happen. It was too much, doing, doing 2 jobs every January. I would start to just get to that, yeah, 3 hours of sleep a night for an entire, 6-week, 8-week period starts to break
Start wearing on you a
the
little bit.
human soul down a little bit.
Like you said, I think that moment you talked about is so critical, right? That coming to Jesus moment, or that that moment where it tests your faith, right? That
Yeah.
you don't know the other side of Kitlinda. You don't know what's going to really happen. You have a paying job that's kind of holding you up and holding this dream alive, but it's like you got to really believe in that dream now. And I
Yeah.
think that's a great point you brought out to help our listeners, because again, we all have these great ambitions, but when that wall of fear comes in front of us, you got to make a decision. You're gonna climb it and you know look at the other side, or you're gonna look at that and say it's just too much to climb.
Yeah, and I've had conversations with some other folks about those sort of moments, and I don't think it's a bad thing to wait to do the kind of hustle to do 2 jobs. I think it built a lot of character. Like, it proved that I wanted it. I think anybody that I speak with is like, or the people that have worked with, um, know, like, oh well, it wasn't just it wasn't like easy, and I was putting it in and putting in the time, and you have that support financially on the other side that you can, you know continue
Push.
to do these things exactly and push through. But yeah, you have to make that decision eventually where you do take the step. Like, I don't think it's bad to be like, hey, I've got a little bit of a backup plan.
Hmm.
But like you hear from musicians, it's like at some point, are you a musician or are you a waiter that likes playing the guitar? And I think there is a point where, yes, you have to do some of those things, but at some point you have to kind of see, all right, I'm putting it in, I'm putting in the effort, I'm making the progress, and then it does come down to time. At some point, there's only so many hours in a day. There's only so many gigs you can go to somewhere else before you're like, I need to do this and
Hmm.
take that kind of leap of faith into it. Um, I probably, and I think other people wait too long. And probably, maybe it was a year, maybe it was 2 years, but, you got to do it eventually. I don't think the time is like, there's like a day mark, well, after you do it for X days or X revenue number, X employees. But, at some point it's a hobby, or it's, yeah, you're really doing it as a business.
And like you said, I think it's really that commitment. And when you made that leap, was it were you just confident at that point that again, it didn't matter, pass or fail, this is what you were going out with?
Yeah, I mean, I wish I could say like, yeah, I knew it, but I
Hmm.
think I came to terms with like, I would be more, it's like the Eminem, scene. It's like you'd have more regret if you didn't take the opportunity
Sure.
versus taking it. So you have to look at it. And yes, like at the end of the day, yeah, you could look back and say, oh shit, like I was making great money and now I'm coming back and I didn't have this. But I think you'd probably have bigger regrets, when you're old and gray, that like, what if, or I wish I put it in, or, the horrible one is that's my business, but that guy committed to it, there may be a Jeff Bezos somewhere that
Hmm.
didn't commit, right?
Hmm.
And he's like, Yeah, but I had that, and that was my thing. But I just didn't jump into it as much. I didn't quit the job. I was still working at the other company, and he may be right or she might be right, but you don't know unless you do it. And then yeah, like it could be annoying. You'd be like, I did it, and somebody else did a better job, but at least at least your conscience is clean, and you gave it your all.
Like you said, you can't make a shot you don't take, right?
Exactly. Yeah, exactly.
Exactly. You mentioned one thing earlier about the technologies. You were coming across newer technologies. You were learning as you go, and you said something about that learning that I don't want to get lost. And that's how did you educate yourself? I know you said YouTube, but can you detail that a little bit just so the listeners can understand? Like again, this is you didn't do anything, any outlierish type thing. You did things available to everybody else.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I think the simple one is being questioning things and being curious. I mean, I have, employees now where I'm like, don't you, didn't you want to ask? Didn't you see something and take the little bit further? So, and a lot of it is asking questions. A lot of the people that I see that are really successful, they ask so many questions. And it's not question, just being like a child. It's just why, but there is that something about like, getting a little further,
Mhm.
digging a little deeper into it. And I mean, things nowadays are so easy for us. I mean, you ask a person, you can find a person online, or you can literally type that question into a search bar. and then and then yeah, it's like, take that time to watch the things, instead of the Instagram video, you're watching YouTube videos of things you have interest in. And like, yeah, you can skip ahead and search around, but it's amazing how that stuff sinks in. And then the more you surround yourself with other smart people, um,
Definitely.
it's gonna sink in. But yeah, I'm amazed at the resources you can get online that are like, these are like amazingly smart people putting up free videos for anybody. And I'm not a great reader, like I'm not. And
Dude,
like,
I'm an audiobook guy. Like this
I'm
is
an
all
audiobook
not
guy.
correct. These
Audiobooks,
uh
you know I like, you put on an audiobook, put it on 1.5, and just you will just bang out a book. And then
2 days.
podcast, I love listening to music, zone out and stuff, or like focus in on work. But podcasts, I'll listen to them in the morning in the shower, things like that. And YouTube is just, it's insane the amount of content that's out there that people put out, and it's amazing. I mean, it's any question, I'll have people ask me questions still, and I'm like, you're 26 years old. You should know that you can just Google this thing, and someone will literally, with a PhD, tell you the answer.
Yeah,
Like,
yeah.
this is when we were kids, and you're like, I wonder how far it is to the moon. And you just had to be like, well, I guess we'll never know.
Always
I gotta find a Britannica and look it up and find the page. It's just like,
right
ask
here.
the question. Yeah.
Yep, yeah, yeah. You never lied about that. Is there any software out there, right? You've, like you said, I think you've been heavily involved in your business now. Is there any technology or software that you can think of right now that you could use in your business that'll help advance you or give you an advantage in the business that might not be there yet?
Yeah, I mean, I think there's so much free software that's available right now. It's almost like even hard to like crack at that. But I know for me, like starting off, it was Google and their suite of products for everything that we did. And I eventually, all of them have basically a freemium model. So you're using technology that Google itself is using for its stuff, and it's free. And then yeah, they make it, there's a couple hurdles. As we grew, it was like, okay, we'll pay for the Google suite, and we have our branded emails, and everything's under one umbrella. But you can use all the Google Sheets, Docs, all those things right
Mhm.
out of the gate for free.
Yeah.
um, you know I mentioned Upwork and there's like Freelancer or Fiverr for like finding free help or finding help. And these are obviously you pay to get people, but it's free to post a job.
Yeah.
Indeed, it's free to do it. If you want to, yeah, you can pay to get your post out there more, but it's free. Facebook, free. It's costs money if you want to do more paid social. YouTube, it's free. Um, AdWords is going to cost you money, but they even give you some money to start an account. They give you, I think, $500. I remember that was my first $500 was Google gives you a check for $500 to put some ads up. It's just, I assume they still do this stuff. There's a lot of things where they're just giving you free things. I used Zendesk for ticketing and chat, but I think even the first one that I used wasn't even Zendesk, and it was a free customer support ticketing tool. I used Google Voice for routing calls, free. I used, I used surveys off of Google, free. WordPress is free.
You made a good point, not to cut you up, but the service desk. Most people don't think of that, having that free service desk to kind of extend your service, like again, to answer phones and take calls. That's a great free service to mention. Thanks for that.
Yeah, I started off with like Google basically setting up an email and then just basically ticketing it through that way, and really quickly moved over to like a Zendesk ticketing, and it was like $10 a user per month, or it's $20. It was not much, but yeah, it was really helpful. And I built our entire back end operations off of Zendesk. Like I remember, and this was up till 2 years ago when we really got, like, I was using Google Sheets and free macros and things like that to like connect the dots. But I remember talking to people at Zendesk, and they were like, I've never seen anybody use, because I would have where like the tickets were the orders, and that was our fulfillment system, because we have kind of an odd fulfillment system. Um, Standard e-commerce is like book an order, fulfill order, done, right? Completed. Ours is book an order, manage inventory for that order until the time that you ship it, out of stock, returned, cleaned, book back into inventory. But I use that along with like basically Google Sheets to connect it and keep track of everything. But again, it was like was paying for a tool that was just for like ticketing, and was like, oh, you're
These other things,
you were like, yeah, cool, I can put this little macro in and automate this, or put a flag over here, or make custom fields. And it's amazing. They're corporate SaaS level. The company's on their, you'll go to somebody's website and it'll be like free or like $5, and they may be like $1,000 for like a premium corporate level, but you're like, yeah, it's used by FedEx and it's used by Oracle, and you're like, and I'm using it.
And I can put that same tag on my website.
Like, I'm using the same yeah, maybe like you'll use some things. You know how this is. It's like, oh, I really wish I could do that. Well, that's the premium. But a lot of the stuff, it's just like, if you're starting, you just deal with some of the manual stuff yourself, and then worry about exactly.
And to your point with that, even as far as what you get from it, again, you figure it out. It's not as bad as it seems, and also using those services as a service. To your point, for 20 something whatever a month, you're not bringing that investment in house, installing it once, updating it. If they put a new feature on in a month, you got that new feature. If they put it on in 5 years, you got all of the new features that comes, and no uplift or no heavy lifting for you. And like you said, that's something you don't have to worry about. So again, like I said, that service desk piece, I know for me, that's a big one for us. And I know that stands out, and people sometimes don't understand it, but I appreciate you going there with
Yeah,
that one.
when you're a big company, like yeah, there's needs for, IT staff or services, but like when you're smaller, that's what's fun is you can be nimble and you're like, cool. What's my security? Well, Google is a massive company. They got these things secure. I don't know, it's, everything's encrypted up in this Google Drive folder. So, and you can do a lot yourself. And, I've had spoken with other younger entrepreneurs with ideas, and I don't put like tech on a pedestal either, and I'll say, they'll be like, well, how am I going to do this? And I'm like, oh, it sounds like you just, like use a Google sheet, or there's some simple things that you can do. And like, yeah, it's not going to be like scalable to the million orders, but like probably for now, you can get your minimal viable product out, right? And then that one thing that happens, you copy and paste over here, or, do this thing. And you just realize like, let some things become problems and then you can add staff to it or add tech to it. But trying to think you're going to build the laser on day one isn't necessary.
Yeah. All right, man. So just as a recap for our listeners, if I'm going to kitlinder.com, what's my experience? What am I getting? Like, I'm going on a ski trip, and what does Kitlinda do for me? I want them to understand the benefits for me.
Got it. So if you come on KitLender, right now we do skiing as ski clothing, as well as summer camping and hiking gear. We're actually looking to branch into more sports, maybe some fishing, fly fishing gear, or triathlon or wetsuits or things like that. But if you have a sport you're doing, let's say it's skiing like your son, and you don't have ski clothing, you go on the site, you're going to pick the area that you're going, so where you're delivering it to. Some people deliver to their homes. Most people take advantage of delivering it right to where they're going, so they don't have to carry and schlep their gear with them, to the mountain. You'll then pick in the dates of your trip. It'll then pick out the outfit you're looking for. Most of the stuff is set up as kits. So we do rent things a la carte, but we'll set them up as a kit. So you'll go in, you'll say, I'm a man and I want a kit, full kit, and I want snow boots. And then I want to, this is my size, my color, and you'll see the styles that you have. Look at the sizing guide, pick out what you want, add it to your cart, check out. Before your trip, we ship it so that it arrives the day before your first ski day or first rental day. Open the box, you show up at the hotel or wherever you're going, open the box up, everything's in a garment bag. Your son has the video of him, they're pulling this stuff out. Use everything, have fun, look like a star. When you're done, you put it back in the garment bag, back in the box. We give you a return envelope. It's got directions on it, but basically it's got a return FedEx slip on it. And you got tape, and you tape the box back up, put the FedEx slip on it, which is all prepaid. So all the prices are with free shipping there and back. And you're talking about $30 a day for adults, $16 for kids a day, and then ship it back to us. And
done.
Worry about it next year when you go on your ski trip.
Bada bing, bada boom, man. I just see so many advantages of that. You said one thing in the beginning, and you just kind of made mention it again, and I think that goes back to kind of definitely where I come from, and maybe stolen from Neon Dion a little bit, but to look good, feel good, play good. We always had that mentality, and I can come to your site, and like I said, it's not like we're renting a ski coat. We're renting some North Face. We're renting some Patagonia. We some major brands out there, so you can definitely look your best out on the slopes. So
you'll have everything that we rent is of like name brand stuff for the sport that you're doing or activity that you're doing. And I agree with what you're saying. I mean, we say look good, feel good. I mean, first of all, the equipment has to be right. I mean, we both know you can play, I keep looking at these basketball shoes. You can play basketball shoes with, basketball with, bare feet, or, a pair of, tennis shoes. But it's certainly better if you have the better equipment, and it creates a better experience. So I don't know how many people have told me, like, we went skiing once with our kids and they hated it. Well, they got junk at Walmart, the kids froze, and they hated the sport. Now they, and that's a great way to get kids to do something, make them have a miserable time. I mean, you're going to get blisters on your feet doing something. They're not going to want to play basketball, right?
That is
But,
true.
and then there's just the feeling like you're part of the team, like, I played sports, both skiing as well as, team sports. And like, you also want to look like the guy you see on TV or the other good people that are out there, right? I mean, everyone wants to look the part. So I always say, well, you might not be a good skier. We'll make you look like a good skier.
There you go.
And that makes you feel a little better. And, shamelessly, like, I tell people, like, yeah, it is a fun thing. Like, why can't you just look good in your photo? And like, this is that world that,
definitely this world, IG, all of that.
yeah, I mean, like, and I don't hate you. It's like, you spend $10,000 on a family trip. Sure, you want that picture at the top of, Vail to look like
Nice.
you guys. Yeah, you look cool, and everybody's got their style, and you get goggles, and you're looking fresh. Versus, I would hear from customers year one, they'd be like, "We just don't want to look like dorky tourists," because that's what they would look like. All red jackets, all black pants. It was like, they looked like, yeah, exactly. They got the gaper. But it's just like, you want to look like, hey, we could be great skiers, and we look cool. And like, your son wants to be, in black, and the other son wants to be in, print color, or one of the daughters or your wife wants to have fur on her jacket, a bright color. I'll see somewhere it's like, they love that they have the two toddlers in matching outfits. Some of them, they don't want them in matching outfits, or some of it's like, I want pink and blue for the son. And they print the photo up. They make it 8x10. It's sitting on the,
Man, at home.
Exactly. Right.
And that's a good point too, that I completely missed. Kids.
Kids is huge.
My
They grow up every year.
exactly, the grandson. I can't buy him that type of gear. Again, to your point, to really make sure his experience is great, I might spend $500 for one trip, because the next trip he's out of there. So just another just great reason.
There's no way you're gonna find those gloves and goggles at the end of the year. When you go to bring this stuff back, if he does fit in anything, the gloves are gone. Those, somebody eats those when you put them in a closet, and then they're going to grow. I mean, there's no way that you can have a toddler or a junior have ski clothing or any pair of clothing for an entire year. I mean, that's just, I hate the phrase no brainer, because it seems like such a sales line, or it's like, but I will say this is one where I'm like, all my customers are like, this is a no brainer. This is a no brainer. It's like $16 a day. I was going to spend $500. We go on one trip a year. Thank you so much.
I'm telling you, when I heard about it, it was a no-brainer. I was like, man, you could have told me this before you went. I had to test it out first. So yeah, thanks.
Yeah.
I appreciate that.
Thanks a lot, Son.
Yeah, right. I missed the whole trip, but thanks. Cool, but
you guys are in great shape, but normal people like me, our waists grow a little bit. So, Dad, it's like,
I appreciate
yeah, they'll come in for the kids, right? They'll come to the website. We need stuff for the kids. And then mom's like, oh, that jacket's pretty cute. I'm going to get something for myself. And then the last one is Dad's like, hey, why do I have to look at a dork and my pants barely fit? Because,
you know how I go.
Or, yeah, exactly.
All right, man. So what's next for Kitlinda, man? Before we get out of here, what's going on?
Yeah, so we're continuing to go into camping, and backpacking was massive for us this year. Again, it's another activity where there's active campers out there. Totally get it. Buy your gear, go camping all the time. I love it. A lot of people are probably more like you, that maybe go on one camping trip, or somebody's going backpacking and they need the gear. It does not make sense, nor do you want this in the garage. And then it's, especially Texas, people tell me all the time, they're like, if I put this in the garage, it's destroyed. It's mold or mildew. It's basically that doesn't store
Done.
that long. So continuing on that, we had a great, with COVID, this thing, people were doing camping more. So, I mean, that was great. We're looking at triathlon and kind of some wetsuit stuff for this summer, as well as maybe some fishing gear. And again, what happens for me is what I've done is either people ask for it or I do something where I think, hey, I'm actually looking to buy this stuff. So last summer I did it, not this summer, the summer before I did a triathlon. I never done a triathlon. I like to run, but I was like, okay, I guess how many times I've used that triathlon suit? Once. On the one triathlon. Probably doesn't fit me anymore because I gained weight. But so what did I do? I went in and there was no great services for renting it. And I ended up buying stuff and I was like, all right, calling up people to put in orders. We didn't do it this summer for obvious reasons because of COVID, and triathlons didn't seem like a great place to be, but we're monitoring that for this year, as well as I went fishing with a friend, fly fishing, same thing. Like, I wanted dope fly fishing gear. I didn't want to be and sure enough, how many times I used my fly waders? I think I've used them twice. So,
and fly fishing is a long experience.
I mean, it's the type of thing that I think if you're going with somebody once, you're probably, testing to see if it's something you're into. And the rent to buy is great. Like, we sell some of our used stuff, as well as I always tell people they can use us to see if they like the sport.
True.
True. Early on, I had a family. It was like one of my first year, maybe second year, I got like an order for like $5,000 or something, like $4,000. I was like, wow. It's like a lot of stuff. Maybe it wasn't even that high. It was $1,000 or something. And I looked in it and it was like a huge family. And the guy, I called him up, it was just like, hey, how'd you find us? He actually had a business in California and was like, well, it was that same story. I grew up skiing. My wife doesn't do it. I've got kids. He had like a huge family. Had like, 7 kids, all ranges. He's like, I want to take them there, teach them skiing. We went once. It was miserable, but so at the end of the season, he called me up and was like, hey, we had a blast. Kids weren't on the phone. I'm loving this. We're looking to buy a place in Big Bear because we want to go skiing more often. So I want to buy clothing. And I was like, great. I lost a customer, but I love that idea that they're doing something and that's like a family experience. They're getting out and enjoying themselves. And I helped bring them into the market. And the ski industry has these challenges. So it's great to know that like we're helping bring people back to a sport that's putting people out, cities, things like that. I see a ton of people from Atlanta and Texas, and I do hear a lot from them. It's like, we just couldn't afford it. Or it's just, again, like you add another $5,000 onto the trip, you do something else. And, then now they're coming back to us every 2 years. They're going on a ski trip and they're loving it.
See, that's dope, man. See, Kitlinda, you're not only for the people, you're for the sport of skiing. See, ambassador for the sport of skiing.
Ski industry.
I gotta get a US ski tag back there somewhere.
Yeah, right.
All right, man. Before I let you go, I do this to all my guests. You were looking at the tennis shoes back here. We ask all our guests, favorite pair of kicks, man. You sound like you like dope gear, so I know you got a pair.
I'm actually wearing a pair of Crocs right now in my office.
Ain't nothing wrong with that. Everybody wearing the Crocs.
But I did buy my the guy. We're in Vermont, so we like to have inside shoes and outside shoes. So if anybody doesn't have any shoes, I bought him some Crocs that have like spray paint, and he looks all fly in them. But for me, I love Nike Air Maxes, and I kind of have them. Yeah, so I tend to buy those off of the Goat and spend too much money. I have a pair of They're the Nike Jordans. They're like the old school ones. God, I wish I knew the name of them, but they're like $2,000, so I'll never buy those. But
Oh,
they're so pretty. Yeah,
see, you're a real sneakerhead. Look, he said,
yeah.
I go get my stuff off the GOAT. You know what that
I
is.
I
I
love them.
see. I
I
see.
do. I do.
Hey man, hey Forrest, I want to thank you, man. I appreciate you saying your industry knowledge here. Again, we're going to try to promote what as best we can what you do. I think, like I said, it's just an awesome idea, and I think we definitely all can benefit from it. You created a space that is definitely needed in the industry, and like I said, we're gonna work on U.S. skiing to make you the ambassador because you bring it.
I'll get you up there with me.
All right, man. You have a good one. Thanks a lot again.
Thank you.
All
Bye
right.
now.
Much success, man.